Strap in, my fellow creeps, because today's monster has a lot of backstory. They all have some, but today's character, baby, got backstory, okay? Now, it begins way back in the year 1957. And in the spirit of full disclosure, no, I did not go back in time to 1957 to get hold of the mask. It's not that I refuse to, it's just that the whole time travel thing never works for me really the way it's supposed to. Does it for you? If it does, I'm jealous. You must share your process with me someday. But in the meantime, in 1957, there was a movie that came out called Invasion of the Saucermen. And I think, even though it's not on anybody's list of the greatest films ever made or the top 10 best movies of all time or anything like that, I think it deserves recognition, and I think it's memorable, particularly for three reasons. First being, it was a very rare example of campy humor relating to science fiction. Most of the space monster movies and alien movies and all that sci-fi, the whole genre was very serious for the most part in the 50s. But in 1957, Invasion of the Saucermen, it started out to be a serious movie, but then somewhere along the line they decided to make it silly. And I think it was probably the right idea, a good way to go. And it was a very early example of kind of offbeat humor, very campy, with a rare example of authority figures, that is to say, military, government, police officials being represented as a little bit inept and incompetent and short-sighted and goofy, rather than completely strong and courageous and heroic and on the ball. So that was unusual. Another unusual thing about it is, noteworthy I should say, another noteworthy thing about it is that it was the original disembodied hand crawling up the back of the car seat movie. How cool is that? That must have scared so many people so badly, even in the context of a kind of a silly movie. The idea that you're driving alone at night and it's dark, and remember that you saw that movie where the alien had that cut off hand that came up and it might be coming up the back of the car seat, and you know, that's classic. Other movies have done it since, but Invasion of the Saucermen got there first. And well, another exciting thing about that movie was the monsters. At that time, space creatures were mostly just humans, you know. There was probably the best aliens coming to Earth movie at the time would have been Day the Earth Stood Still. And then there were other movies like Phantom from Space and Man from Planet X. Most of them were more humanoid and weren't super weird, but everybody had heard of little green men from Mars or little green men from the moon, and that was kind of a thing back then. Like today we think of grays and the little skinny bodies and the big heads. Well, they thought of a similar thing back then, but everybody said little green men from Mars or from the moon or just from space. So Invasion of the Saucermen was very unusual in that it was an early, maybe the first movie ever to actually bring you little men from space who were small and had great big heads, which was a common thing, already a cliche by 1957, because it was mentioned and aliens were described that way in so many stories and magazines, and you know, that was just a classic kind of alien, but nobody was doing it. Now, it's true that the Metaluna mutant got there first as far as big brain heads, because This Island Earth, that had the Metaluna mutants in it, came out a couple of years earlier than the Saucermen. But he was such a big guy and he was so weird. The Metaluna mutant has like big long pincher arms and no discernible facial features, just weird shapes and veins and stuff. And he's very tall. So he didn't qualify as the little green man from space like the guys in Invasion of the Saucermen. Yeah, and why are they Saucermen? Well, you know, every planet is basically known for its chief export, and one planet makes coffee cups, one planet makes teacups, his planet makes saucers. In fact, he says it was very unfair and an extreme overreaction on the part of Earthlings to use the word invade and call it invasion. He says he was just delivering a cargo of saucers to a restaurant supply chain. I don't know if I believe him or not, but that's his story and he's sticking to it. Now that I think of it, he's got 4 lips, so half of what he says is double talk. So I don't know if I can believe him, but anyway, take a look at this thing. This came out, announced in 2024, but became available in 2025. Yeah, it's a Saucer Man. And if you're going to look this up online because you'd like to buy one of these masks from somebody, be notified that there are 3 minor variations in the words Saucer Man. Sometimes it's 2 separate words, saucer space man. Sometimes it's spelled all one word, like Saucer Man. You know, like old Mr. Saucerman. He gives the worst trick-or-treat candy on the street. Saucer Man, see? Or sometimes it's also spelled with that little hyphenated Saucer Man. You know, like Scooby-Doo or Anne Margaret with that little hyphen going on. So check all 3 spellings. How was it spelled in the movie, Saucer Man? Oh, 2 separate words? He thinks the movie actually spelled it 2 separate words with his face in there. Well, they can check that if they want to. Look at this thing. It's huge. It really is as big as it is looking here. And it's not actually a brand new sculpture. This particular version of the Saucer Man, and there have been several over the years, not a great many, but there have been a few different versions. This one actually has been released before. What? In the year 2000. That's right, 2000. This thing came out, and if you see him described as an IC Saucer Man, you know, if you would have landed where the thing from another world did, you really would have been an IC Saucer Man. It's a pun. IC. Never mind. Not a good sense of humor, these guys, you know. Anyway, if you see it called an IC Saucer Man, or even spelled out an Elusive Concepts Saucer Man, that's because it was originally released in the year 2000 from a mask company called Elusive Concepts. And if you're not familiar with them, they were huge movers and shakers pretty much in the 90s, largely in the 90s, in the world of masks. They had the licenses to everything, and they had just tons and tons of new masks every year. They were the equivalent of like Don Post or Be Something / Zagoni, you know, or Today Ghoulish or Trick or Treat. Huge company, tons of great masks, a great many of them sculpted by the same guy, Mario Chiodo. And no, that's not the same Mario who has a brother Luigi and they always have to save the princess from that dragon-looking guy. No, that's a different Mario. But one thing that was cool every year that I remember from back in the day, and I'm not sure how many years they did this, but if you're familiar with a TV channel where you can order things and buy, shop from home, a home shopping network type of channel. There was one called QVC. I don't know if it still exists or not, but of course QVC stood for Home Shopping Network. And they would usually be on there selling, jewelry, purses, ceramic figurines, automobile gadgets, kitchen gadgets, thermonuclear warheads, you know, just nice gifty stuff. But every year, a few weeks out before Halloween, they would do a Halloween show, and the host would wear costumes like traditional Halloween costumes, like a pirate or a cowboy or a convict or a policeman or a Dracula type outfit. They would dress up and they would decorate their little set there with some stretchy cobwebs and paper skeletons and pumpkins and all the fun stuff of Halloween. And they would do an Elusive Concepts masks special where they would bring out different masks and you could order them right there over the QVC channel. And that was always cool. Not sure how many years they did that, but it was fun while it lasted, wasn't it? Now, the reason nobody really remembers this mask from 2000 as much as some masks are remembered today, collectors, including me, did not pay much attention to it at the time and did not think much of it because, frankly, it had a really ugly paint job that made it look like a big fruit salad. Okay, I don't know if somebody lost a bet or somebody was colorblind or what, but the original edition from 2000 from Elusive was purple, and not a natural realistic purple, but like a silly goofy purple with red veins that really clashed, and a green mouth and yellowy eyes, and it was very off-putting. It was just kind of an eyesore because of that paint job. And they never offered it in either of the two acceptable Saucer Man paint jobs, one of which is green with yellow veins, the other of which is kind of a fleshy Caucasian looking like a pinkish orange. And kids, don't eat a pinkish orange. If you see a pinkish orange, there's something wrong with that orange. Don't eat it, okay? That's a good health tip, yeah. It was only offered in that dumb paint scheme that nobody really liked, and I think that's why people maybe didn't pay much attention to it and didn't appreciate that how cool it is there's a Saucer Man mask. Now, back in the day, I repainted 2 of them, I think, maybe 3, I think only 2. I repainted a couple of those silly purple ones to look like the fleshy pink and yellowy and some brown, the nice bacon fat paint scheme. I repainted a couple of them for collector friends like that. I never saw one painted green like this, but the 2025 edition from Trick or Treat is this great color green with yellow veins, and the veins could be done with more attention to detail, but considering these sell for 80 or 90 or 100 bucks, you're not going to get the kind of paint job that would take somebody days to carefully do every little bit of it by hand. So I think it's still great. Unfortunately, there is one change made from the movie that is a deliberate change, and I see why they did it, but I still kind of wish they would have resisted the temptation. In the movie, these guys have pretty phony looking ears. It's true, they're just little ridges. They're just series of ridges, and they don't really look very organic. These ears, Mario or somebody I see decided to give him realistic ears. So as you can see, these have very natural look, like they really are made of organic matter, and he really could look like this, but it's not quite accurate to the movie. Now, why do I recommend the mask even though it's got something changed from the movie? Well, let me tell you, he takes up a lot of room, have you noticed? Let me tell you about that. Most of the masks I've seen of the Saucer Men over the years have the wrong facial expression. To me, they look surprised or horrified or startled. You know, a lot of the Saucer Man masks look like he's saying, "Oh, I stepped on a Lego," or "No, how did that mule get in here?" Something like that. But this one has more of the personality that you see on the masks made by the legendary Paul Blaisdell, a super imaginative, clever, low-budget effects and monster maker from back in the 50s. His masks in the movie looked mean and angry and peevish and confrontational and belligerent and defensive, or as we alien psych majors and psychologists call it by the medical term, ornery. Yeah, and those masks do not look ornery, but look at this one. He's full of orner, isn't he? He's very ornery, and they had to cheat just a little bit to do that. Now, as for Elusive Concepts, they're not in business anymore. They are defunct. And if you don't know that word, defunct, what that means is at one time they had a great deal of funk, and then they lost all their funk, and now they no longer have any funk at all. It's very sad when that happens, but they are defunct. But in 2024, the creepy guys at Trick or Treat Studios got the rights to some of the Elusive Concepts molds and masks, and one of them happened to be this guy. Can you see that? It says right there, Saucer Man. How cool is that? Now, I mentioned there was a discrepancy in the color. I was fortunate enough to be in LA by which I mean Los Angeles, not Louisiana, just so we're clear, to be in LA years ago and got to attend a special screening. There was a sci-fi retrospective of old black and white sci-fi movies, a retrospective where they showed Invasion of the Saucer Men and also It the Terror from Beyond Space on a big screen in a theater, hosted by none other than our good friend Bob Burns, who was a guest speaker there and told the audience all the details of when the movie was made, because he was there and helped Paul Blaisdell with the effects and the tricks they used in the original movie. So that was great. That was fun. Bob was one of the guest speakers. I think there were a couple of others, but I forget who they were. Anyway, Bob Burns is the legendary horror and sci-fi historian and prop collector and expert, very well known in fan circles, and a great guy. We love Bob, and he's actually been here to see me and Laura a couple of times. He's been to Horror Hotel. Yeah. Look at that thing. Look how nice that paint is. Look at those little veins on the eyes, and look how ornery he looks. See? He doesn't just look surprised. Now, they did have to cheat a little bit with the sculpture to make him look this mean, because the real ones in the movie don't have quite this kind of eyelids, but close, and I think it's worth it because this guy is so dramatic. Now, I mentioned before that there were 2 different paint jobs approved for this character, because the real ones used in the movie were kind of the bacon fat color scheme. But then how come this is green? Well, the studio wanted people to think in 1957 of these as little green men, and so all of the promotional and advertising materials, the posters, tinted lobby cards and stills and all that kind of stuff had them with this color scheme, green with a little bit of yellow and you know, white eyes. So this is kind of what they wanted you to think of him as looking like, even though if you had been on set when they were making the movie, you would have seen the more skin, the more fleshy kind of peachy color. But this is how the mask was done, and that might be the right choice, although in a perfect world, perfectly, I wish they offered both versions. Now, by many, the definitive Saucer Man is considered to be the Distortions Saucer Man because it's adapted from original molds. The ears and the brain and part of the face of the Distortions one are all made from original molds. So it could be argued that that's as close as you can get. However, I think this one has the personality down better, and it's more affordable. Now, if I was president of World Horror, okay, I would arrange to strike a deal between Distortions and Trick or Treat, because Distortions offers a magnificent full body figure of a Saucer Man, but it's quite pricey. You won't get one for the neighborhood of $80 or $90, no. But it has gorgeous hands, sculpted by none other than Jordu Shell. Now, the hands in the movie have eyeballs on the backs. It's true, these guys, they have veiny, skinny fingers with lots of little veins, and they have eyeballs on the backs of their hands. I don't know how that serves them, you know, anatomically, because can you imagine? Hold on, guys, while I look for my keys. And then you, like, looking around, yeah. Anyway, Jordu sculpted these magnificent Saucerman hands to go on the Distortions figure. I think they should have made a deal with Trick or Treat where you could buy hands to go with this. They're painted with this color scheme and have those nice little eyeballs on there. That's one thing that adds to the fun of the movie, is that the hand that crawls around the disembodied hand has an eyeball on the back so it can see where it's going. So it knows that you're up there in the driver's seat, and it knows it's climbing up the back seat and it's going to get you in the back of the neck. Also in the movie, they inject people with little needles that come out of their fingertips. They have pointy fingertips with little needles that come out. Nobody has done that yet, but it would be fun to make a costume hand or a prop hand with have you ever seen those fake hypodermic needles like they use in TV and movies where there's a needle and it looks like you're getting a shot, but the needle actually goes back up into the... You seen that? Wouldn't that be cool? They have hands with those little retractable needles on it? Maybe not. I think it would be cool. I think Distortions certainly ought to step up to the plate with a prop replica and just make a cut-off hand, you know, with the bone sticking out the back like in the movie and a little eyeball on there so you could have your Saucer Man disembodied hand. But the life-size figure from Distortions is pretty spectacular, but it doesn't look quite as angry and, as mentioned previously, ornery as this little devil. And I would like to share with you one more strange collector's item, a really rare, really unique item relating to Invasion of the Saucer Man. This is him. This is my little buddy, Saucy. This is little Saucy the Saucer Man. Say hello to the folks, Saucy. Yeah. Now, if you're wondering where I got such a thing, this was actually a gift made for me by Laura years and years ago, completely from scratch. And by the way, I don't know where you buy scratch now that Joanne Fabrics is gone. Where do you get scratch? I don't know. But back in the day, Laura made, I think, 3 of these. One of them for our friend Bob Burns, and one of them for another friend whose name I'm not going to tell you because you'll be pestering him to try to get him to sell it to you. We don't want you doing that. But I think she only made 3 of these, but Laura made him up as far as the pattern and all that. And the ones in the movie really do have this almost Kermit the Frog looking jaggedy collars and cuffs going on. But this one was made by Laura, and he's got little buttons for eyes and little button eyes on the backs of his hands. So that's little Saucy, made by Laura Lady. And I know seeing this is making many people who are viewing right now begin to think things like, why do we have to listen to this guy every week when it seems like his wife is the cool one? I know, but that's the way the eyeball bounces, you know. And I recommend the Trick or Treat Studios Saucer Man. I don't know what you're going to wear with it. In the movie, they're just wearing plain dark clothing. So 1 year for Halloween, okay, a couple of years, I guess, we did a mannequin figure at Horror Hotel. We did a life-size figure of a Saucer Man. And in the movie, they were played by dwarf actors. I mean actual little people. When I say dwarf actors, I don't mean actors pretending to be dwarfs. No. But they were small. They had small bodies and these great big oversized heads. It was kind of a comical look. We used a kid mannequin, and there were no hands available, and I wanted to give him some kind of hands, so I took a pair of old Don Post Alien hands that originally went with the 905 Alien from Don Post, because they at least had long skinny fingers with veins on the back, so they were kind of in the ballpark. And speaking of balls, I took little styrofoam balls and glued them onto the back of an old pair of Don Post Alien hands and put some epoxy over them to make them shiny, and drew a little eyeball, pupil and veins on there. So he wasn't really movie accurate, but it kind of had the right look. And as far as the color, I went with dark green tights and leotard on that mannequin rather than black, even though black is kind of the accepted, because I was confused by the movie. Now, they were supposed to be green, and then they were supposed to be green and black, and then they were really this fleshy color. Well, then in the movie, somebody says, telling the police about the aliens, says they were all green except for their heads. So that may have been a mistake in the line reading or in the script or something, but it really confuses the issue as far as what the Saucer Men were really supposed to look like. So some people like it green because that was the studio's intention, and some people like their Saucer Men pink or orangey pink because that's what Paul Blaisdell originally colored them as. You dig? Yeah. And actually, the original ones in the movie were much bigger in the back, the way they were made. They weren't this cabbage head shape, like a light bulb, like he looks here. Originally they had great big brains in the back, but some wise guy made poor Paul Blaisdell cut the backs down, so he cut like a pie slice, like they call that a dart. They cut a dart out of the back and just, brought the two flaps together and glued it, and it made the back of the head a lot smaller. No good reason to have done that. Paul Blaisdell's idea was much better, I think, because it was more weird, because the head really looked like a giant brain rather than just this cabbage head shape. But anyway, look for Invasion of the Saucer Men from 1957, and do your best to avoid the Larry Buchanan remake from 1965? That's a guess. Called Attack of the Eye Creatures. Yeah, or just the Eye Creatures, but you don't need to see that one if you've seen the original. Although I kind of like the Eye Creatures themselves, or the one that shows up in the, well, that's another story for another day. Say goodnight, Saucy. Yeah, so long everybody. Yay! And let's end with a poem. In keeping up with the cultural aspect of Creepy Cheapies, leave us end with a poem about the Saucer Man. He's got a mean look on his face, also eyeballs all over the place, with big exposed veins and big exposed brains, and he came here from somewhere in space.